We had a huge industry in the tobacco industry. And for a long time, people said, hey, tobacco is not addictive. It was misclassified as non-addictive. And it was only when the Surgeon General in the day said, hey, hold on. There's a lot of compulsive use here. It's a psychoactive agent. There's reinforcing behavior. Therefore, it must be addictive. Because prior to that, when we looked at tobacco and we said, well, people don't go out and overdose and binge on tobacco and purposefully die. So it's not like it's heroin. And so we hadn't really classified it as an addictive substance. But when we re-looked at it and the Surgeon General looked at it, he said, there's these elements that really delineate this as an addiction. And when we did do that, there was a huge class action group of lawsuits filed by states, and instantaneously, the large tobacco manufacturers who had become very, very efficient at delivering a product that reinforced its consumption, such to the point where they were adding sugar to the tobacco, such to the point that they were putting perforators in the tobacco so that the side stream of smoke would increase. And they had modeled all of this out so that the velocity of delivery of the substance that was creating the dopamine response was stronger because of all that. And the fact that now the Surgeon General had said, well, this thing is addictive. They ended up basically pulling away from it and saying, well, a lot of the scientists were going to leave. And they went to the next available field. And they went to the field of food manufacturing. And it was right about that same time that we started to get really efficient at processed food manufacturing. And now I got to tell you that as things have progressed and we're recognizing that processed food could be addictive, and these excellent food scientists and nicotine scientists have come over there, they're now moving to the marijuana industry. So you're going to see something that was formerly considered non-addictive become a substance of abuse and use. And so this is kind of the history of where this came from. So once they reclassified nicotine as addictive and the regulations kicked in, all of those scientists redeployed. What they've really done is they use these processed foods as a way to optimize the delivery. What happened was that essentially the processed food became a vehicle for delivery, and sugar was essentially its payload. And what happened was that just like every other thing that we've ever had, as we further refine it and make it even better, it becomes more addictive. What we've got is extremely energy-dense substances that deliver bioavailable calories, but then they activate the reward system. And it's not just because it tastes good. Independent of taste, these things get into our gut and they activate receptors inside our intestines if we bypass the mouth. And they activate those gut receptors and create an addictive drive, even in animals that don't even know what they're eating. And we know that because there's a wonderful book, it's called The Dorito Effect. The way that the food scientists have done this is that they know that we have sensory specific satiety. So if I sat you down and put you in front of a bag of, or if I put you in front of a steak, eventually you're going to say, well, that steak is tasty. The first bite is way better than the second bite, and which is way better than the fifth bite, which is way better than the 20th bite. And by the time I get to my 25th bite, I'm kind of full. But sensory specific satiety does something else. It goes, hey, if I change the flavor characteristics inside the same bag of Doritos, and I have 13 or 14 different Doritos, and each one has a different flavor, hotness, or texture, or salt, I constantly will titillate my tongue, and I will not be able to stop eating it. And so they overcome sensory specific satiety inside processed food by creating food variety inside the same packaging, which is a very cool way to do it if I was trying to get somebody addicted to Doritos. And so those are the combination of things. And we've been sold on the concept that, a diet soda doesn't have any calories in it. And so we've been misinformed because the non-nutritive sweeteners are combined with other reinforcers like caffeine. And what's more interesting to me is that the non-nutritive sweeteners, many of them affect our gut health, which then significantly progress metabolic inflammation and metabolic syndrome. We also have a whole group of additives that we don't normally find, and these are nucleotides and emulsifiers, and they also destroy gut health, and they also destroy our gut lining. So there's a whole host of things that we have to consider. These highly processed foods dramatically increase dopamine, and we know that if we give the patients a dopamine antagonist, it actually reduces their consumption of highly processed food. So we know that there's an overlap. We also know that these patients do hedonic substitution. So what that means is that, for example, if I have somebody who is a person who is using pain medication and they don't have access to their pain medication, they will substitute sugar in place of the pain medication to get the same effect. Unfortunately, that will cause a progression in their metabolic inflammation, and that progression of metabolic inflammation will only make their underlying issue of addiction a little bit worse. So those are the kind of things that I wrestle with in my clinic, because I'm dealing with metabolic inflammation, metabolic syndrome, addiction, pain, opiates, and all of the methods used to do that. And when we've looked at our clinic, about 99.7% of our clinic has metabolic inflammation. And about 99% of it plus has significant issues with hedonic substitution. And these are major issues. In the general population, we can identify food addiction or addictive-like eating, that behavioral, in about 14% of regular adults and about 12% of children. And that's a study that's a little bit old, because I would conjecture that it's a lot higher than that now post-COVID. We had an average weight gain of like 20 to 30 pounds during COVID, and because of the lockdown. And being in the world of addiction, one of the major issues of addiction is it's more than just a substance. It's more than just, hey, I'm going to eat this drug, I'm going to have this drug. It's also underlying this is a major issue of loneliness and separation from society, and COVID seemed to only make that a lot worse.